In this video, you're going to learn how to graph quadratics in Vertex form. I put at the top of the sheet here what a quadratic in Vertex form looks like. Y equals a, x minus h squared plus k. A always determines whether the parabola is upwards, which means a is greater than 0, it's positive, or downwards, when a is less than 0, when it's negative. So the first step to graphing a quadratic in vertex form is to identify the vertex, which is your h, comma, k. It's a point. It's going to be given to you in vertex form. The next thing you have to do is just identify the axis of symmetry so you can draw a straight up and down line. And then we're just going to graph another point. Okay, so let's just try a couple examples together. And you're going to get the hang of it. Vertex form is probably the easier of the two forms. Alright, so the first thing they do is they give us y equals x plus 2 squared plus 3. A is invisible here, which means it's 1, which just gives us a clue our parabola is going to go upward since there's a little invisible 1 there. What I have to do next is determine my vertex. Step 1 is my vertex. My vertex here, since this is a positive 2, it's going to be negative 2, comma, my k, which is 3. Once I identify my vertex, I'm going to plot it. Negative 2, 3. I then am going to identify my axis of symmetry. It's your x equals h, negative 2. So x equals negative 2, it's just going to be that line there. I want to plot it or just visualize it so I can know how far each point is going to be on the graph. The last step is to graph another point. So I want to make a table. I'm going to include this point on the table, so I'm just going to put it in the middle. I just need one more point. So I'm going to either pick negative 1 or pick negative 3, the two numbers closest to negative 2. Either one is fine. You're going to see it works out the same if you pick the other number. I'm going to pick negative 1. So I'm going to take my function we are given here. I'm just going to rewrite it since I scribbled on it already. And I'm going to replace my x with negative 1 to get a y value. So I'm trying to figure out what y equals when x is negative 1. Now you just do order of operations. The parentheses need to go first, so negative 1 plus 2 is a positive 1. 1 squared is 1, plus 3 is 4. So when y is negative, or when x is negative 1, my y is 4. So the next point I'm going to plot is negative 1, 4. So negative 1, 4. Now if you notice, that doesn't give me a full parabola. It only gives me this side of it. My axis of symmetry is going to help here. I am 1 away from my axis of symmetry, so I'm going to go 1 the other direction and draw my u. And that's all we need to do. Let's try another. We're going to try quite a few together so you can get the hang of it. First thing I want to do is identify the vertex. My vertex is 1, since this is a negative 1, comma 2. 1, comma 2 is right there. My axis of symmetry is going to be the point that goes straight through it, or the line that goes straight through it, excuse me. And then I'm just going to graph another point. So I'm going to make a table, put my vertex on the table, and pick an x value that's super close to 1. So you could pick 0 since that's 1 away, or 2 because that's also 1 away from 1. I'm just going to pick 0. I'm going to take my function, plug in 0 where I see x, and solve. 0 minus 1 is negative 1. Now here's where you will get tripped up if you don't do your order of operations. We did parentheses first. We now need to do exponents. Negative 1 squared is negative 1 times a negative 1, which gives me a positive 1, plus 2, and then multiplication comes next. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. So the other point I am going to plot is 0, because that's the one we put in for x, comma 6, because that's the y value I got when I substituted it in. 0, 6. I can graph that half, and I see I'm 1 away from my axis of symmetry, so I'm going to be 1 away on the other side, and I can graph. I also notice it's an upwards parabola. I can check to make sure I did it correctly. My 4 is positive, so I did. That is the correct answer. Let's try a few more together just to get the swing of it. You can pause this one, try it yourself, see if you get the hang of it, and then we'll keep moving from there. My vertex here is positive 3, comma 2. I plot it. Axis of symmetry goes through just so I can know where to reflect. I make a table. A point close to 3 is 2, so I'm just going to use 2 and plug that in to my function. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is 1. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Plus 2 is 0. So my other point is going to be 2, comma 0, which is right here. Since my vertex is my highest point, that's going downwards. 1 away is right there. And I notice it's a downwards parabola, which means my a should be negative, and it is. Alright, last two. In number 4, they're just giving us x plus 2 squared. There's nothing getting added or subtracted on, so it's technically plus 0. So my vertex is a negative 2, comma 0. Negative 2, comma 0. And then I'm just going to do the same thing as before. Pick a point super close. I'm going to pick negative 1. Negative 1 plus 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. So my other point I'm going to plot is negative 1, 1. I know this is my axis of symmetry, so 1 away would go over here. And then last one, they're not giving you a value connected to your x, so you could assume 0 for your h, and 3 is k. So 0, 3. When I make my table, I pick a point super close to 0, which would be 1. 1 squared is 1, plus 3 is 4. So my other point I am plotting is 1, 4. My axis of symmetry is the y-axis here. 1 away the other direction. And that is your parabola. All right, if you have any questions, just sign into office hours.